Okay, so Holly Clark, thank you for taking the time to talk to the students at the University of Waterloo and, of course, me today. You bring a lot of expertise about the impact of technology in education. And this is something you've been doing for a number of years now. So just to get us started, can you tell everyone about what you're doing today and how you got here?
So today I'm an author. I wrote the Google Infused Classroom. I'm sitting here today. I'm writing the Chromebook Infused Classroom. So I have an Infused Classroom series that I kind of work around. I am working with a startup right now here in San Diego. Super excited about what that's going to do. I think it's going to revolutionize how we do teacher learning in the future. So I'm so excited about that. I had been working with EdTech team, and they are a team that does professional development and things all around the world. And we did a Google Summit there in Waterloo, in Kitchener. I think cities, maybe there. I don't know my Canadian geography so well, but and I was doing that, and I got here because back in the year 2000, a big ed tech giant was a parent in my classroom, and I was talking about what I thought education could do for, or technology could do for education at a back to school night. And he came up to me at the end and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, you know, I want to give you a computer for every kid. And this is like 2000. Nobody had computers for every kid. And it came with a note, and the note said, "Dear Ms. Clark, here's my contribution. Show the world what technology can do for education." And so, no pressure, but he gave me that one-to-one classroom. It wasn't even called a one-to-one classroom. And the things that I was able to accomplish garnered the attention of people like the state superintendent in my state of California. And so people just started recognizing what I was doing, and we were looking at test scores, and my test scores were higher than everyone else's, and we attributed it to technology and education. And so that's how I've gotten to where I'm at now.
And clearly you think that education is important. That's part of why you work in this area, presumably. And you know, I thought we might start just by you telling me what it is about education that you think is important in the world today.
Well, I think education sets the basis for everything that happens in an adult life. And I'm sorry if I'm looking at the camera. You're in this little picture over to the side. So if I'm not looking at when you guys watch this tonight, I apologize. But and I think it's how we make open-minded and well-rounded citizens. And if we're not doing that correctly, and we're working in a model that's outside of doing that, and working in a model that maybe gets people ready for 1920 or even 1985. We're not doing what we should be doing, because education is the foundation for your love of learning, for being an informed citizen, and for being compassionate and open-minded. And for me, if a kid walks out of my class loving learning and being compassionate, I've done my job. They don't need to know when the Civil War was. I'm okay with that, you know.
Absolutely, and love and learning, and I think love and teaching as well, I think is important. You mentioned your book, The Google Infused Classroom. So can you just quickly tell us what that's all about? What is the Google Infused Classroom? And I guess you might want to say something about what the Chromebook Infused Classroom is.
Okay. So that's a really good question, because the Google Infused Classroom is about using pedagogy first, and then using technology to amplify pedagogy. So what happens when people get technology in the classroom is they're like, oh, we can do this app. And they're not really thinking about teaching and learning. Great, you can do the app, but how is that getting at student learning and growth? So the Google Infused Classroom was written to help people think pedagogy first and then education. And when we say Google Infused Classroom, we mean you have this Google ecosystem. Kids are out searching. They're in Google Apps for Education, or G Suite they call it now. And now that they're there, how can we infuse their learning with some of these tools in powerful ways? So inside of the Google Infused Classroom, we talk about Flipgrid. We talk about which is one of my favorite apps, by the way. And we talk about like Book Creator. And those aren't Google tools. But inside of my Google Infused Classroom, they're being used to get at student learning and growth. And when I mean Google Infused Classroom, maybe I'm passing out a link for Flipgrid inside of Google Classroom. Maybe I'm having kids search for answers in Google that they put up in Flipgrid. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be using Google all the time. It just means it's just this idea of infusing your classroom with tools, but thinking about pedagogy first. And Chromebook Infused Classroom is just the next level of this, because all these classes have Chromebooks. And now that you have them, please don't sit in desks with kids facing the front of the room taking notes about your PowerPoint. How do we infuse the classroom with something more substantial, since we have these devices? And if it's okay, I'm going to tell you about the three, and I'm looking to see if I have a card with usually I have a graphic, but I talk about this in a framework that if we're using technology to do these three things, I believe we're doing technology in the classroom right. And that is to make student thinking visible. So we know when they know something, know when they don't, and we can change our instruction in real time to meet their needs, to hear from every kid in the class. So instead of kids raising their hand, hearing from them, asking something using like Socrative, where we can see all of their answers come up on the screen, and we know where they are in the learning process. And then finally, allowing kids to share their work, because they learn best from each other. And when kids get to see the answer of another kid, maybe on the screen or something, they'll go, oh, interesting way of answering that. I said it this way. And when they compare that, they're in a state of metacognition. They're thinking about thinking. And so that's the kind of stuff that we want to do with technology in the classroom. We don't want to type papers and use Google Slides. And like, that's for when we first started. Now we can do powerful things.
So I watched a presentation that you gave in TEDx Langley, I think it was, which I thought was a great presentation, where you explained these different pedagogical approaches, and you pointed out that technology can be applied in different ways based, as you've described already today, on different pedagogical approaches. And so basically what you seem to be saying there is that to simply apply technology in a traditional way, or to support traditional models of learning, isn't properly exploiting that, or isn't an effective way for us to use technology. And I guess you've explained that to some degree. I don't know if you want to say anything further about that at the moment.
I just want to say that who sits in our classrooms right now are Gen Z. And Gen Z learners are the first kids born into worlds with smartphones, tablets, and computers. And what they're going to do with their business world and life when they get and graduate from school, which, by the way, a kindergartner today will graduate in 2031 and will hit retirement age in 2076. So this is where we're talking about their workforce is going to be. And that's going to be in a time when we're probably colonizing Mars. We're doing things on social media. You can't be a business person today and not understand social media, but we're having kids write long essays, and we're not doing anything that looks at succinct messaging, which is what they're going to need. So the pedagogical approaches need to shift in understanding that kids need to, I say in the TED Talk, they need to be transliterate. And they need to be literate across all mediums of information, not just reading and writing anymore, which are super important. I teach reading and writing right now, because I'm still a bit in the classroom. I forgot to mention that earlier. But they also need to be literate in images, in video, and in social media. And we're not doing any of that. So we're not getting them ready for their future. And I don't think they're different learners. I just think what they need to do looks a little differently. So we need to honor that.
So you're saying that our changing world really requires change in the ways that we teach, partly because of the experiences they're having now growing up, but also for the things that they're going to be expected to do in their future jobs. And I guess also in the way that the world is changing, that they'll go through many changes in their lives, and the preparation they get those changes as well as possible. Yeah.
And I want to say one thing. I'm drinking a coffee here. It's not cognac. This
yes.
is my full brew. If any students are watching saying, wow, in San Diego, they really start the morning right.
it could make for an interesting interview, I'm sure. But But the next question I've got, while the intake is relatively low, is advice on what schools should do to pursue their own information technology strategy. So hopefully some of the people who'll be watching this will influence what schools will do to improve them using technology. What should they do that? Where do they start?
So I'm going to talk always about pedagogical and educational technology rather than the person who's doing the networking and what have you. But one thing I think that's going to change, and you all should be aware of. My friend, my co-author who wrote this book with me, who is Canadian, she now teaches in Florida, and she teaches a personal branding class at this school called North Broward Preparatory School. And that class is a required class for high schoolers to take there. And they look at, when you're putting stuff online, how is that your brand? And so instead of looking at digital citizenship like, oh, be safe online, don't put your address out there, some stuff is important, but really what's important is understanding who you are online and what you say is either bullying or not bullying, or what looking at what messages come at you or are said in a certain way and understanding why they are. And so as people go forward in this career, and the people in your classroom, they're probably going to be in this education realm a lot longer. I'll be gone and have left. I want them to think about this idea that we have to be able to teach kids about their online presence and do it in a different way. So Tanya, my co-author, says, we're right now in schools giving kids an inoculation. Okay, be safe online. I just told you not to put your address on there. So, okay, go. And it's like you give them a shot and you think that they will not get the bad part of the internet, and it doesn't work that way. They have to understand the essence of branding and who they are online, and I'd like to see that in more schools.
Absolutely. And I've also heard it said that in areas such as knowing what to believe online, being able to deal with what might be called fake news, and and messages that are not true or are inappropriate of some kind, they're certainly exposed to a lot more of this type of thing, and presumably, some are arguing that should become part of the curriculum.
It has to become part of the curriculum, because I can say this to you Canadians, when it's not, things like you get certain presidents when people don't know how to sift through information, and in my country is an example of the importance of it. Mm-hmm. So I can't, it affects my everyday life where I'm at right now. So we have to teach this. And in Chromebook Infused Classroom, I devoted an entire chapter to it because it's so important. We give kids Chromebooks and we give them iPads and we're like, oh, go search. And then they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to validate. In fact, the other day I was working with this school. I have this long-term engagement with the school, and they said, you're coming next week. What do you want to talk about? And I said, I really think we need to start with searching. And they're like, no, teachers know how to search and kids know how to search. And I'm like, no, they don't. They don't have any idea how to do a well-executed search or validate information. So yes, and sorry to get political. I'm sorry if you happen to like my president, but I am.
No, I don't.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
But that's I guess another subject. But certainly technology and the things that are happening in politics today is an area that we could talk about for a very long time. But that's impacting politics in Canada as well. But maybe not as visibly as it is in the US.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. So culture, as far as technology adoption and use in schools, is important, and you've talked about that to some degree. Are there things that schools should do that will help them to develop an appropriate technology-oriented culture, things that will make people's, I guess, understanding of it more appropriate?
Yeah. So we're finding in the US, I can't speak for Canada on this one, but that in schools that get technology, about 20% of the teachers adopt it. They're early adopters. They go forward, they do some stuff, and 80% stay behind. Well, actually probably 70% stay behind, and 10% are like, I'm not using that and I'll quit first. And I think that's because they didn't learn with technology, so they haven't seen it play out in the classroom. So I don't know if this really answers this, but this is the approach I've been taking that's moving the lever to get at least 50% people using it. And then we're trying to get the other 40 and 50%. But I'm doing something called Embed PD. And I actually learned about this from Tanya, my Canadian co-author. And by the way, she's from Montreal. She taught me this. And what I do now is I go in with a 7th grade teacher and we teach together. So she needs to teach a literature unit. We work through it. I put it in a hyperdoc, which I'm really into. I'm big into hyperdocs. I come in and I teach it using technology to support what we're doing. Then other teachers come in and watch how I do this, what it looks like, what it feels like. They take part. When I'm having them take notes in a book creator, they do it. And then at the end of the day, we all go in and we look at what worked, what questions they have. We dissect it. We look at it deeply so that they can see what it looks like, because here's the problem. Most people never learned in this kind of environment. So teaching that way, we're learning, they're just not catching on, and it's no one's fault. It's just you didn't learn that way. So I find that I'm able to move the lever or needle, when I show and they can experience what it's like. Even our young teachers didn't learn this way because they had teachers who didn't know how. So we're learning together.
Absolutely. And one of the things that might help to encourage more of them to take the plunge would be any examples you might have of how technology is being used effectively today. Do you have any examples you'd like to share?
Can I share my screen?
Let me see. I don't know if you can. Let me see if I can find a way.
Well, let's not worry about that. I'll send you a couple examples, and then you can show them tonight. And the example I'm going to show you is from Adobe Spark. And so in a moment, you can open the link. And this is, for me, this is what writing should look like in 2019. It's going to be, you're going to see a kid doing a writing assignment, but it's going to be planked in the background with images that are, I think, supporting the writing and making it come more to life. And that's kind of a 21st century skill. Like, we need to be able to write cohesive and coherent paragraphs, but how can we use media to support and bring and draw people into our message? And this, it's Adobe Spark page that you're going to see that this kid is using. And then at the end, she's actually doing an interview with her grandfather, because this is a story about how he helped save Jews during the Holocaust as a Christian man. And I really like this example because I still think writing is very important, but we've got to up it to 2019. And one of the things we know, if you're on Twitter or Instagram, images reign supreme. If you don't have an image with something on Twitter or I mean, Instagram, you have to, but no one's coming to your content. Even on Facebook, if you post something, no one is looking unless you have an image. And so it's now learning, how do we pick those images that help bring the writing to life? And that is a so important skill for these kids in their future. So this is a first step of that. So I'll send you actually a few of them, and you can all go look at them. They come from Tanya's class, her personal branding class. So their assignment was to tell a story and tell a story well using this medium. So just have a look through them. You'll just see the way images, I think, kind of almost make it two-dimensional. So enjoy those. I think they're, and I'm showing them to you in a Wakelet, because I think Wakelet, and this will be a way for you to see Wakelet. Wakelet is this new tool that lets you grab stuff from the internet and keep it somewhere that you can always get back to it. And I'm really, Wakelet's new, and I'm really into how that's going to really impact education a bit too. So it'll give you an opportunity to see both of these.
That would be great. I'll look forward to that. I'm always keen to see things that can improve what we do. But what you're describing there is that literacy will move beyond simply requiring you to be able to write well, which you'll still need to be able to do. But you're also going to need to be able to use other communications technologies and techniques.
Transliterate, it's a term.
That's good. I had not heard that yet. That's a very good term.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also wanted to deal with the fact that it does seem these days that we're seeing concerns about harmful impacts of people, of particularly children and young people using technology. There's a range of opinion on this topic, I think it's fair to say. But there does seem to have been more mention recently of these concerns. And so I'm keen on the advice you would have that might guide teachers and parents as they try to influence and guide children and young people's use of technology.
So one of the things I want to put out in the forefront of this, I don't have kids, so I'm not watching kids use technology in my home and seeing how addicted they are to it. And I understand it's it's becoming an issue, and I'm respectful of that, and I'm open to hearing ways that we can maybe help in that way. But I think branding class help alleviate kids using it in the wrong way. So right now, I believe that kids are using the devices, their phones and things for consumption, for constant consumption, and they need that, and it's becoming addictive. But what if we taught them how to create with it? What if we taught them how to curate their own personal network? And so everyone's complaining that, oh, the devices are causing these problems. What's causing the problems is we are simply ignoring it in schools. And if someone says we need to teach social media in schools, they're like, how dare you? Kids should not be on social media in class. No, I'm not talking about kids being on Facebook and sending messages to each other. I'm talking about understanding the messages and looking at the stuff that's coming on Facebook and saying to yourself, does that seem true? Let me validate that. And when we are simply ignoring it in schools, we're going to have the problem that we have. And so while I respect the addiction issue, because I suffer from it, right? I think it can be alleviated with some critical thinking about adding it to our curriculum in education. And so you're there in Ontario, and I've always admired Ontario's curriculum and your ability to really be more 21st century forward. So you guys are the ones who can do it, especially Waterloo, your Silicon Valley of, Canada. So this kind of is in your guys' hands. Lead the way,
We'll try. I was able the other day to speak to a child psychologist at the University of Oregon, and I asked her that question, what advice would she have for parents? And her advice was that the parents should look at their own behavior, that if they were sitting looking at their own device all the time, then their kids were likely to do the same thing. Or if they weren't given proper attention to their kids because they had one or maybe two eyes on the device while they were talking to the kid, then this was going to impact how the child would behave. And that that resonated with me. It made perfect sense. Start with your own behavior. But your guidance is, that we should be teaching children appropriate behavior, not whether or not they should use it. It's about how they should use it.
Yeah. And sometimes parents are missing some really important lessons too. Like, we have these phones that could teach kids about money management. Like, you have to pay your bill, you have to do this gigabyte, and make sure that you're not going over. And parents are not doing that at all, which is a shame. And another thing, that they should be taking the devices and they should be sleeping inside of the parents' rooms, period. But I'll bet you 10% of parents do that, So we're missing these great teachable moments because parents don't know what to do.
Yeah. And to a large extent, I guess it's not their fault. They have not got guidance that's helping them with this, Okay, I got two further questions. The first is, looking into the future, in 10 years, how do you think education will be different?
Oh, it's going to
Hard question.
not hard for me.
Oh, good.
I left ISTE last year. So ISTE is, for if you guys don't know, it's the International Society of Technology Educators, and it happens in the U.S., a different city every year, and it's the big place where people go for technology education. Anyway, at ISTE last year, I walked away in my final dinner that I had with the other like top educators, and I said, in 5 years, this conference will be completely different because it will be AR and it will be VR. And we are going to walk into rooms and experience things. We're going to look at the heart from the inside and travel through the arteries. And while it'll take public schools longer, independent schools are already getting there. They're already using things like HTC Vive, where kids are inside of hearts and they're doing these kinds of things, and it's experiential. I believe inquiry is going to change everything that we do, and the fusion of inquiry and VR. While it won't be as quick as I would like it, in 5 or 10 years, VR will be in every kid's, we'll call it backpack. I don't know if they'll still have backpacks. I don't know what that's going to look like, but there will be some VR component in their school, and it's going to change. I hope it opens minds and hearts as I get to travel to, like, I just recently went to Abu Dhabi and I was at their Grand Mosque. Like, seeing the beauty of that opens my heart to a religion that might not be the one that I grew up with. So I hope it changes the world in opening hearts by being.
Yes. Yeah, I had a similar experience to walk around. I saw an example, I guess, of virtual or augmented reality, which was, a body that you could walk around and you could see the insides and where all the organs were and things. And you wouldn't, I didn't imagine when I was told about this that it would have quite the dramatic impact that it had. It was fascinating to be able to see this and to understand how everything fitted together. I thought it was fascinating, and so that does seem like an important area.
So can I stop for 1 second and say, for you and the kids or students you have in your classroom, there's a really important school to watch for VR and what they're doing, and that's Frankfurt International School. And there's a guy out of Frankfurt, I was just there, named Bryn Stothard, and he does I think either a YouTube channel or something called VR in the Classroom. You can follow him on Twitter at Bryn Stothard, and I'll send that along as well. In fact, I'll send his YouTube channel in that Wakelet. And he said something to me. I did an interview with him for a podcast I was doing with Alice Keeler a while back, but we stopped doing it. But he said, VR is confrontational. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he said, at the very least, it's going to confront your textbook and the way that you're teaching and say, this can't happen anymore because I've got the heart right here it's right in behind me, and it's going to confront you with the way that you are traditionally teaching. And I was like, mind blown. It's amazing. Like, and I'll even send you that podcast. We're not doing that podcast anymore, but to listen to what he says about VR, I think is amazing. So I'll send that as well.
Yeah, I've only seen it once, or twice, I think now. But it did have that sort of impact where you said, I never imagined that this could have as much impact as it did once you actually saw it,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last question. You specialize in K-12 and, very importantly so. But I'm interested to see if you've got any observations or advice for universities on how they might benefit from your knowledge.
So I don't know how to answer this question correctly, because I have this love-hate relationship with universities. I went to one, I love it. I went to really good ones, so I have a nice pedigree that follows me along well. But I think there's a little bit of a tragedy of college happening. I think that to get kids to college and into good colleges, we are keeping APs around, which I think should be gone. I think we are killing kids and their spirits and their entrepreneurial mindset so that they can get homework accomplished at 5 and 6 hours a night. And so that's where my hate relationship comes with universities, and I wish they would change and look at the mindsets that we need to have for successful people and bring that into their application process, so that we're not fueling this stuff that's happening in K-12s that's killing kids, in my opinion. And I actually, my next TED Talk, if I had to, I might still do it. I have to do another one before, but would be the tragedy of college, how college admission is, and all they have to do is tweak that, is gonna could help K-12. But now in universities, it seems like you're doing a good job, but I'm taking a college class right now on social media. The guy is having me, it's online. He just has me answer multiple choice questions at the end of the week, which I go, by the way, online and just find the answer. I don't read the material. I don't do anything. So college teachers aren't getting the training that I feel like K-12 teachers are doing. I wish college teachers would go sit with a K-12 teacher, and probably middle school is probably your best one, and just watch how they teach and take that back into the classroom.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. And I noted especially the application process, the things that universities think are important, clearly does have this influence on what K-12 will do, because they're trying to help people get into university. And but very good point, very important. Those are all the questions I've got, Holly, and I'm really grateful for you taking the time to talk to everyone today. I think it'll be very helpful for them, not just for the students in the class, I hope also for other people in the University of Waterloo community. So thanks a lot for taking the time to do it.
And I just wanted to say, if you want like tips and tricks and some of the stuff I'm doing, you can go to hollyclark.org, which is my blog. I try and put blog posts up. I do a newsletter of like things I think are coming out in education, so that you can stay in contact that way. And thank you. It was actually, I wish I could see your students, but my pleasure to spend time with you today.